Our speaker today is Cláudia Hilsdorf Rocha, who is Associate Professor at the Applied Linguistics Department, the University of Campinas, Brazil. She holds a PhD degree in Applied Linguistics, and her main field of interest includes foreign language teaching and learning, literacies, and education technology. And she presently holds a research productivity scholarship granted by the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, and her current research is translanguaging, oral academic literacies, and foreign language learning in digital environments. The title of the talk today is Pluralities in Brazilian Portuguese, Exploring Diversity in Language Learning in Virtual Courses. So I'll take...
Thank you so much.
And so it'll be about 30 minutes of talk, and then we'll have around 20 for questions.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Today I will talk about MOOC we developed called Pluralities in Portuguese Brasileiro, and by doing so I will also try to explore a little bit diversity in terms of language learning in virtual courses. But before I start, I'd like to thank the University of Cardiff and Professor Jenny Nelson for kindly hosting my academic visit. I'd like to thank colleagues like Licinia for the welcoming, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to be able to be here talking to you today. I should also thank the Applied Linguistics Department of my university, CNPq, the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, for their financial support. So the purpose of my talk is to explore the concept of language MOOCs and also to present some of the main challenges we face in order to develop such virtual courses nowadays. I also try to situate the discussion by presenting the main features of this language MOOC I mentioned. And I think it's also important to say that this virtual course is focused on reading and listening skills for intermediate and upper intermediate learners of Portuguese as an additional foreign or second language. And I also think that I should say that, as I see it, the presence of a multiplicity of multimodal resources is a distinctive feature of the course, because it represents, to me, an important move towards decentralizing written and oral language in meaning-making processes and in learning design processes. So, I think it's important for me to situate the purpose of my talk, and to do that I bring the concept of place of speech as proposed by Djamila Ribeiro. She's a very popular Brazilian black feminist. She approached the concept of place of speech to address social inequalities in my country and in the world from a more contextualized, situated perspective in order to highlight a more socially responsible and ethical point of view as far as social transformation is concerned. In her work, she explains that every one of us have a specific place, a social locus of enunciation from where we speak and see the world. And what we say, how we say it, why we say it, and how other people react or respond to our utterances are all dependent on such place of speech. So being conscious of this place of speech is important for all of us and for us educators, so that we can try to promote social transformation and fight inequalities with the other and not in place of the other. So, taking these premises into account, I bring this image to approach Brazilian cultural and linguistic plurality This is an image created by Eduardo Cobra, a street social activist. And today there are around 210 million of us, so there are really many of us, and we are a very diverse people. And at present, I think it's also important to say that Brazil registered 274 different indigenous languages spoken by 305 ethnic groups. This plurality is, of course, regarded as an invaluable cultural patrimony, of course. But I should also say that the myth that Brazilian Portuguese is the one and only official language still persists in my country. And of course, this monolingual ideology imposes social, cultural, and linguistic oppression, which, of course, as language educators, we try and tend to fight very harshly. Nowadays, among so many other educational demands, we are struggling for more inclusive language and educational policies regarding indigenous groups, deaf people, and other minoritized groups as well. This is the map of Brazil, and on it we can see the location of Campinas, the city where I live and work. Around 2 million people are living there today. This is a picture of my university, State University of Campinas. It was officially established in 1966. It's a public institution, and it is located in the state of São Paulo, one of the 27 federative units that constitute Brazil. Nowadays, we have around 38,000 graduate and undergraduate students altogether based on one campus. I believe that images tell a lot about our cultural identities. They are images, and culture and identities are intrinsically connected, and I thought it would be a good idea to bring to you my favorite pick of Unicamp. I hope you appreciate it. This is a picture of the Institute of Language Studies where I work. We have 3 departments: Applied Linguistics Department, Linguistics Department, and the Literary Department as well. Concerning undergraduate courses, we offer 4 different degrees, including a teaching degree in Portuguese language, a teaching degree in Portuguese as a second or foreign language, a bachelor's degree in linguistics, and a bachelor's degree in literary study. Regarding graduate programs, the Institute offers Master and PhD in Applied Linguistics, the departments I mentioned, Linguistics and Literary Theory and History. We also have a Master's on Popularization of Science and Culture. And before I present Pluralidades, I thought it was a good idea for me to talk about some theoretical premises that support the course. So first of all, there is the idea of education as a political practice. It comes from Freirean educational philosophy. And so when Freire writes about education, he has this urge to bring the idea of practices into this philosophy of education. So there should be no separation between theoretical ideas or principles and our daily lives or reality. From this perspective, education should deal with real social problems and promote social, cultural, and identity awareness. It should also be liberating, and therefore it should be committed to social change. A liberating education, according to Freirean perspective, should foster critical thinking and should be aimed at expanding our views and our knowledge of the world. In its turn, meaning making is seen as a situated practice, and as such, it's also ideological by nature. Besides, it encompasses many different semiotic resources and other than written and spoken language. Well, we have this urge to approach critical reflection, so we deal with the notion of critical literacy. So to promote critical literacy in kind of a liberating education, whether it is online or not, it is necessary to foster critical reflection regarding the plurality of ways of existing in the world and of producing knowledge. Critical awareness concerning the plurality of languages, semiotic resources used to deploy meaning, of cultural and social identities are considered fundamental elements for us to promote social transformation. And they are important to nurture this kind of critical language education we are talking about. Last but not least, when we think of the design of educational practices and of online courses, it's important to bear in mind that learning is situated experience with and in the world. So activities should be contextualized and be as similar as possible to real life. In present digital times, many authors claim that we should widen the scope of learning experiences we promote when teaching. Marilda Cavalcanti, a Brazilian applied linguist, for example, argues in favor of a kind of language education that is transdisciplinary in nature, socially engaged, anthropologically guided, and plural in focus. And as I see it, this integrative and broad approach can better respond to a world where language practices are so linguistically and socio-culturally complex and so deeply dynamic. This interconnected approach also seems more appropriate, I think, to deal with reality as it is. And it makes it easier for us to be aware of so much plurality and to fight against inequalities. When talking about digital media, culture, and education, Potter and McDougall claim that digital education nowadays should break the barriers between dualities, such as formal and informal learning, for example, and then we should try to foster or nurture more integrative learning experiences regarding the different dimensions of literacy practices nowadays. This way, these authors claim, and I agree with them, that as educators, we should promote a more interconnected kind of literacy practice so that such practices could be more appropriately aligned with the complexity and the dynamicity of our present lives. In the sense, they propose a more unifying concept, which they call dynamic literacies. In practical terms, virtual courses, the focus of my talk today, should try to offer possibilities for learners to engage in language practices that integrate different languages, different modes, different genres, different cultural views, and so on. So I will now go to MOOCs as an emerging research and educational field. And what's in a name? Well, they are massive because it should involve the enrollment of hundreds or thousands of students. It's open because they don't have restrictions in terms of age or geographical locations. They are online because there is not a face-to-face component, and they are course because, of course, they are planned, they have a syllabus, and so on and so forth. Of course, there's not only one way of defining MOOCs, but this is the most common definition. It's also important to say that MOOCs can be considered a very recent enterprise and a very promising field, because it's been growing so fast since they were first created in 2012. In fact, 2012, 12 years ago, was considered the year of the MOOCs as advertised by the New York Times back then. Many platforms were then created, and some of the most prominent ones are, of course, Coursera, linked to Stanford University, edX, linked to Harvard and IMT. FutureLearn is a very prominent MOOC provider here in the UK, and Veduca is a small but a very important Brazilian enterprise. It's a non-profit platform also created in 2012. It's also interesting to approach the differences, very briefly, the difference concerning MOOCs typology. Different designs in terms of platform structures are driven by different views on language, on education, on pedagogic approaches. XMOOCs are the most, I think, controlled ones, and they have a more rigid structure, and consequently they offer a more traditional kind of course. It involves a more transmissive, teacher-centered approach based on lectures, short videos, and quizzes. Pluralities was created linked to an XMOOC platform. So you can see the challenge it was to create meaningful learning experience, language learning experience in this kind of platform. On the other hand, we have CMOOCs. They tended to follow a connectivist, student-centered approach. They are more flexible. They emphasize creation, creativity, autonomy, and they're based on networked learning. Here is a table where you can see the basic differences between the kind of MOOCs. I think it's important to mention that MOOCs are based on a single platform like Coursera, okay? But CMOOCs are open to the connection to other kinds of platform, networking, etc. Another interesting feature is concerning interactions. While the CMOOC typology is based on controlled and it's more single-spaced, CMOOCs offer a more distributed and multi-spaced kind of interaction. So accreditation is something interesting as well to note, because XMOOCs are copyright-driven, while CMOOCs are based on open education and open educational resources. It's very important also to mention that the benefits of this kind of courses are not consensual. There have been a lot of controversial positions regarding the potentiality of MOOCs to provide meaningful learning and to promote the democratization of education. Colin Timmerman, for example, highlighted the increase of the possibility of the massification and the mercantilization of education with this accelerated growth of MOOCs. So more research into more meaningful and really more accessible types of courses should be developed. Likewise, there are some problems that I think need to be urgently addressed so that we can become these spaces more accessible, sustainable, and meaningful. The high number of dropouts are something to be considered. The lack of learning support provided by the course design, because it's based on independent learning and it can be a problem. The quality of the learning experience provided, especially by XMOOCs, and the need for more adequate environments to be developed. Okay. As more specifically, as far as language MOOCs are concerned, Soklik, back in 2014, considered that they had a relatively short lifespan, and that they, of course, needed more investigation. As we all know, language learning is a very complex practice, and consequently, appropriate environments, platforms, and tools are urgently needed, especially when it comes to the development of oral literacies. There's another kind of disadvantage that the most popular languages are the English and Spanish, and I think that we have to deal with that as well, so that it could be considered really plural, accessible, sustainable, not only in terms of language, but also in terms of culture. So I think that I have addressed that. Main challenges besides the development of appropriate pedagogies and instructional designs also include a need for more thought about the development of appropriate types of assessment, accreditation, and also of dealing positively with heterogeneity concerning skills, interests, learning styles, and expectations. I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about this report, which was developed by Erasmus back in 2015, and they were worried about the kind of interaction and learning provided by MOOCs, and they developed this kind of framework for us to develop and for us to evaluate language MOOCs and the quality of interaction learning they were able to produce. So they ended up defending what they called MOIL, which is a more integrative kind of platform and a more interconnected kind of design. And the framework involves some key elements related to content, assessment, pedagogy, community building, technical infrastructure, and also financial issues. Now, I'm almost ending my presentation. I'd like to talk a little bit about Pluralities in Brazilian Portuguese, which was this MOOC developed by a Brazilian team in 2015. If you want later on to access the course, it's very easy, but I also leave some links here. So what is Pluralities in Brazilian Portuguese? It's a 5-long MOOC whose aim is to expand intercultural awareness and develop upper, advanced, or intermediate reading and listening comprehension skills regarding Brazilian Portuguese as a foreign language. From a pluralist perspective, this was very important to us to have this kind of raising awareness about this cultural and linguistic plurality, really explored, and it should be a support to the development of other activities. So from this perspective, the course aims at exploring cultural topics and linguistic diversity while teaching language in a more strict sense. The course activities are based on contextualized use of Brazilian Portuguese in several different communicative situations. So it was the course was developed by a team of 5 people. 2 people were in charge of technical issues, so they just developed all the videos, created all the videos, and they also loaded the content to the platform. It was not, back then, it was not an easy task to do, because It was the first language course by Coursera, and I think that the platform was not ready for that, and we were not ready either, because we struggled to try to make interactions more meaningful. And the other 3 people, which includes me, were language teachers at the university, and we were responsible for creating the design, the educational design, and the content. Here's just a slide now to show how many people have accessed the platform. Today count on around 39,000 learners in total, but we have 24,500 active learners, which mean learners that are involved in all the modules of the course. Course completers are the ones that finished the course and paid for the certification. So here is just to give an idea of how the syllabus is organized. So the course counts on 5 weeks, and the first week we deal with the guidance on the structure of the course, the objectives, and so on, as well as with the idea of critical literacy. We try to explain to students what it is, how important it is to have this in mind. Week 2, we explore pluralities concerning identities. Week 3, we deepen into that, and then we talk more about cultural diversity. And week 4, we cover festivities in Brazil, and week 5, we problematize what it feels like to be home in a foreign country. So every module has the same structure. It is composed of 5 segments. Segment 1 deals with listening comprehension, 2 with reading. Segment 3 deals with grammar based on the texts, oral or written, that were already presented. Segment 4 is a kind of assessment, most of them quizzes, unfortunately. And segment 5 is where we offer some additional content concerning plurality, concerning language, and so on and so forth. This is just for you to have an idea what students see when they access the platform. As you see, the scripts were very important resources to be exploited, because since it is independent learning, students have to know exactly what is expected from them. So we explain everything in Portuguese and in English. And we explain the purpose, the objectives of every activity. We explain the outcomes which are expected, and so on and so forth. We also thought it would be interesting to have a glossary with just to tackle some problems, possible problems concerning vocabulary. It's not very adequate because we presuppose they will have problems with this, but there's no other way to address this point at the time. I bring this slide just, it's a way to approach what we thought back then when we were trying to develop the course. You wanted so much to provide meaningful learning. So the platform was very controlled. So what we thought is that we could compensate that by exploring a lot the multimodal nature of learning. So that's the idea, and of course we had some theoretical background to develop that. So how we organize this plurality in terms of content when we try to develop content. We created, based on some Bakhtinian framework, 3 dimensions to be explored. So in all the units, we try to have diversity and confluence of modes and medias. That is, we try to decentralize the importance of written and oral language by bringing images and So, and other kind of resources. The plurilingual dimension showed us the importance of the course to count on a plurality of social languages, accents, and cultural and different cultural and literacy practices. So we counted on different genres, different people talking, different historical backgrounds, and so on and so forth. And sorry, there's it's misspelled here, but the plurivocal dimension reminded us of the importance of bringing as many differences as possible concerning worldviews and ideologies and everything. So remember the place of speech I mentioned at the beginning. We try to invite people to record and the narratives which are present at the course, and we try to select them and to invite them based on their difference in backgrounds. This is just to show that when we are talking about reading, we call attention of the learning to the fact that reading is also a multimodal practice. So they learn to read by reading about the nature of reading. Linguistic diversity is here represented, as I said, by different people with different backgrounds. We have, for instance, a couple who had been studying a Chinese couple who had been studying at Unicamp at the time, and they were talking about their experiences. Doca Furtado is also an artist who was a friend of a person of our team, and he loved June parties, although he was from Salvador. And then we thought that it would be very interesting to listen to him and to see what he had to say to us concerning his plural identity. Here's an example of how we dealt with cultural hybridity and identity diversity. There is this video and about Ayako. Ayako is a Japanese Brazilian teacher at Unicamp, and she was struggling with this hybrid identity, and so she talks a little bit to us about what it felt like to be Brazilian and Japanese in Campinas and at Unicamp. So Ayako also has a blog, and then we used her blog, of course, with her authorization to develop reading activities. Here is an example of how we covered the topic of festivals in Brazil. We tried to problematize stereotypes by discussing June parties and how Brazilians responded to this experience, and we talk also about June parties being a symbol of the Portuguese culture. Am I correct, Lucina? So this is what we talk about. I think that critical literacy is worked in several ways. For instance, we have this, I don't know if you can read it, but Checa Tatu. Checa Tatu is a very old character, filmic character in Brazil, and we problematize this character in terms of what we believe how we can describe what we call a person from the countryside. So we try to fight stereotypes and we problematize that. When we bring this place we call home to the scene, we try to approach that from different perspectives, and we bring, for instance, Tarsila do Amaral with her paintings to try to reproduce a little bit what home could be like, and so on and so forth. This is just a very brief slide to show how the videos were prepared. I think that you can have a look if you access the course. And to finish, just we tried also to develop reading and listening activities based on the idea that I mentioned before of situated learning. So what we call by situated listening comprehension. Listening comprehension that is explored based on real people talking about their real lives. So here are some, I think that I showed this before, but some of the activities that we did that we proposed concerning reading, and trying to be a little bit away from quizzes. We tried to insert some open questions in the platform, and of course, as it is an independent kind of learning course, we had to add commented possible answers to at least guide the students to know about their performance. So here, just for you to have a look. Even the quizzes have their answers commented, so we thought it would be a very important resource to foster learning and grammar, reading, and listening comprehension proficiency. We also have videos on reading and listening strategies, trying to approach that learning to learn dimension of the learning process. Grammar is also situated because every lexical or grammar item are explored based on real text, real life texts, oral or written. We also have videos concerning explicit grammar, which we call overt instruction, because we also believe that this is very important. And last but not least, besides the glossaries, we kind of encourage students to participate in the forum, but this is not a tool that they use so much. To finish, some brief closing remarks. I'll leave you with the words by Álvares. She says that as far as LMOOCs are concerned, even nowadays, I guess, more research and empirical studies should be developed so that we can more consistently build a set of guidelines to support massive online language education with appropriate digital designs, methods, and content that are accessible, representative of a plurality of identities, should be safe, meaningful, and motivating, and I think that we should add now sustainable in terms of language, culture, so on and so forth. So that's it. Thank you.